Hi there guys, welcome to another episode of the Cover Zero Show with me, your host, Simon Conboy. Just carrying on with the franchise reviews for the last decade, the years 2007 through 2016. This episode will be focusing on the NFC East winning Dallas Cowboys. So for this series, what I'm doing is breaking down the last 10 years worth of records and mentioning any coaching change that occurred over that time, playoff appearances, that kind of thing, and then discussing the last 10 years worth of draft. I'll explain that in a bit more detail. I'm grading those as well once I get to that part of the video. Again, if you've watched any of these in the past, apologies when I have to explain that again. It is what it is, I'm afraid. But the Cowboys, so in the last 10 years, they've amassed a record of 92 wins and 68 losses. 2007 through to 2010, they had Wade Phillips as coach. Since then, it's been Jason Garrett. So a fair bit of stability. We all know who runs the show in Dallas. What Jerry Jones wants and says, Jerry Jones gets and does. So, going on to the drafts. Well, actually, I'll quickly mention they had 4 playoff appearances in that time. It really feels like more, but the Cowboys get so much attention being the Cowboys. 4 playoff appearances, all division wins in that time. Surprising with Tony Romo there, and considering how productive he's been, there haven't been more. There was that big spate when I went 8-8 3 years in a row. Had some middling defences in that time. Got to say, I feel like they've underachieved. Whether that's because everyone does buy into the amount of talent on the Cowboys at times, I think that's likely a contributing factor. Let's see if that is the case when we evaluate these drafts. So what I'm doing is I'm going through all first, second and third round picks, giving them a grade, whether it's a solid pick, giving the team a score of +1 overall. Any players that are mediocre for their draft position, did enough, wasn't a waste pick, they won't affect the score in any way. Any bust will be a score of -1. And then for rounds 4 through 7, due to the amount of players that simply do not make it or do anything in the league, I'll be highlighting players who have done so, and they'll be designated value picks, which will add a +1 total to the team's score. So we'll see at the end on the Friday episode. I'll be doing a big recap of what some of these stats mean with the context of every team. Hopefully that'll be some really interesting, I think it's interesting stuff. Hopefully you think so too. Definitely recommend checking that video out once it's up. So the 2007 draft for the Cowboys, their first round draft pick was Anthony Spencer, defensive end, outside linebacker type pass rusher. I think he had a solid career with the Cowboys. It wasn't the longest career. Had a few injuries that sort of cut that short, but him and DeMarcus Ware were a really good tandem. Wasn't a high first round pick. For that reason, I'm willing to give it a solid. I was definitely a valid player on those Cowboys teams. Maybe underachieved a little, but I'll go with solid. It might be marginal. Could definitely just go with mediocre there. But I'll be generous. In the third round, James Martin, an offensive lineman, he did nothing. He was a bust. But in the fourth round, they picked up Doug Free that year, the offensive tackle. It's just announced his retirement. Definitely a solid value pick. He's been a solid player for them for a number of years. Moving on to the 2008 draft. Pair of first rounders here. First one being Felix Jones at 22nd overall. He had a very underwhelming career for a first round pick. He was a bust. Also, with the 25th pick, cornerback Mike Jenkins. He was a bust. Very mediocre player. I think he struggled throughout his career. In the second round, Martellus Bennett, which I guess a lot of people probably forgot he played behind Jason Witten for so long. If only they'd realised how good he was. Solid pick. He's a very good NFL player, even if he didn't do too much with the Cowboys. A couple of really good value picks in the 5th, Orlando Scandrick. I'm not a great player, but solid NFL player. He's been around a while. And in the 6th, Eric Walden, the outside linebacker again. Not a great player by any means, but a reasonable NFL player, had a pretty good career. That will also go down as a value pick. Moving on to 2009, no first rounders here. I believe they traded to get Felix Jones. So, pair of thirds. We've got Jason Williams, linebacker. He did nothing. He was a bust. And what's that name? Robert Brewster, an offensive lineman. He also did nothing. He was a bust. Moving on to the 2010 draft. This was certainly an interesting one. Important for the Cowboys. Des Bryant with the 24th overall pick, the receiver. A couple of three Pro Bowls, an All-Pro team. One of the better receivers in the league, true number one. Really, really good player. Definitely a solid pick there. In the second round, Sean Lee, injury prone throughout his career, but when he's been on the field, he's been great. Made an All-Pro, a couple of Pro Bowls. Definitely a solid pick, great second rounder. And in the 7th that year, Sean Lissamore, a defensive tackle. He's had a reasonably good NFL career. It's good value in the 7th round. So, pretty good draft there. Moving on to 2011. I think this is where the Cowboys start to really start shining in their drafts, to be honest. First round, Tyron Smith at number 9, the offensive tackle. One of the better tackles in the league. Still got a number of years ahead of him. He was very young when he was drafted, either 20 or 21. He's been a great player for them. 2 All-Pro teams, a few Pro Bowls. I think the All-Pros and Pro Bowls are always skewed somewhat towards the Cowboys because, of course, their fan base votes voraciously. So, but he's been that caliber of player, so no issues with that. Solid pick for sure. In the second, Bruce Carter, the linebacker. I really thought he was going to be a good player. He didn't do it really too much with his career. Could do it as a bust. I'm just going to give that mediocre. In the third, probably should be a bust. I might change it. I'll think about it while I carry on. In the third, DeMarco Murray, the running back. Great value for a third round pick. Definitely solid. Of course, doing damage with the Tennessee Titans at this moment in time. Then the 2012 draft. First round, Mo Claiborne with the 6th overall pick. Now plying his trade for the New York Jets. Should probably go with bust for his time in Dallas. Was good this year, and even then he missed most of the season. Of course, injuries have been a problem. Before last season, he was pretty poor. I'm going to go with mediocre, although again, this one should probably... No, I'm going to have to go bust. He was picked 6th overall. Did not work out for the Cowboys. Of course, no longer with the team. In the third, Tyrone Crawford, defensive end. That's a pretty solid pick for a third rounder. Not a bad player. 2013 draft, we got Travis Frederick at 31. I remember the uproar around this pick. I was also on those like, well, it's difficult to say because all the pundits are like, well, he would have been available. Like, we don't know that. Based on his production, he probably wouldn't have been. You have to think someone else might have saw something in him. He's the top centre in football, arguably. For my money, he is. Great pick. The strength of that team is that offensive line, so I'm sure they've got absolutely zero regrets regarding that one. In the second, Gavin Escobar, the tight end. He's on the roster. I'm not willing to say he's a bust. No, Jason Witten just gets all those snaps, even now. What a player. And in the third, Terrence Williams, the wide receiver. I was quite critical in free agency. I think he's been a very underwhelming player. But he's been enough of a contributor and good enough to not necessarily say he's a bust. Similar thing with JJ Wilcox, the safety. Played pretty well last year. He's now with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. A bit of a liability before that, but still young. Jury's still out there. Just go over mediocre there. They got a good year of production last season. Now for the next 3 drafts, of course, they're a bit more recent. I'm going to be a bit more lenient, a lot more on the fence with some of these. As much as I hate sitting on the fence, a lot of these players haven't necessarily played enough for me to have a conclusive opinion as to whether they were bust or solid. Players I feel strongly about, though, I will give a grade to. So 2014, first round, pick 16, guard Zach Martin, best guard in football. It's not going to change anytime soon, I don't think. He's really, really good, like very good. So that's a definite solid. In the second, he's the best player on that offensive line, and it's a good offensive line. In the second, DeMarcus Lawrence, defensive end. He's shown flashes at times. I think he's a bit inconsistent. No grade there for the moment. We'll see how his career continues to progress. The 2015 draft, Byron Jones, safety. Missed a chunk of last year. I think he's been pretty good when he's been on the field. I'm willing to give that a solid. I think this is a good player. One of the top talents on that defense, even though there's not a huge amount of them, if I'm entirely honest. In the second, Randy Gregory. Obviously fell all the way to them because of personal issues, addiction issues. He's been an absolute bust. I can't see him getting back into the league, in all honesty. If it works out for him, great, but I'm not sure it will. In the third, Chaz Green. He's not done anything. I believe he's a receiver. Should have made a note of it. No grade there. Last year's draft, Ezekiel Elliott at number 4. Yeah, he was best running back in football last year outside of maybe Le'Veon Bell and David Johnson. That appears to be a home run, so solid pick there. Jalen Smith missed all of last year. They knew he would, the linebacker. I can't attach a grade to that one. In the third, Malik Collins, defensive tackle. I thought he showed some stuff last year. I'm willing to give that a solid, since he was just a third rounder. I think he'll continue to progress and be a good player for them. And in the fourth, Dak Prescott, who of course had a fantastic year. Definitely a solid pick at this point. I think he should continue to progress and be a great player for this franchise. So, in total, interesting stuff from the Cowboys. They've done a really good job in the first round. They deserve massive credit for that. One player that I thought was mediocre. 7 solid players. A couple of busts there. That's a really good ratio. So they've done a great job with those high picks. Jerry gets a lot of stick for obviously having a massive amount of say in them picks. But to be honest, if that's the case, he's got a lot of them right. Particularly recently, where they've got some real high-end talent there. At some point I might go into the revamp the grading system a little to consider the overall talent level, but for the minute I'm just trying to establish a baseline, and this grade could really go up due to the calibre of player that they've managed to obtain in the first round as of late. Outside of that, not a huge amount of production. A lot of mediocre players, particularly on the defensive side of the ball, would have not done a great job of getting impact players. That really comes across in this score. Reasonable job finding value 5. That seems to be about average for the teams I've evaluated thus far. Only 6 busts, however, so they have got contributions out of players, even if they haven't been high impact ones. It does give this team a total score of plus 11, marking that down because I forgot about Anthony Spencer. I'm moving that down. Plus 10, double digits. One of the few teams in double digits thus far. Done a really good job drafting as of late. That's really boosted the grade. Of course, last year's draft in particular, because I am willing to say they nailed it with some of those players. This team's got a lot better. It's got a very young core on offense. They should continue to progress. They've done a really, really good job there. So what do you guys think? You think I've been a bit too generous to the Cowboys? I suspect there'll be some people that might think I've been too harsh because, man, I've seen some ludicrous levels of fanboy from Cowboys fans. But, you know, it's not tying you all the same brush. I'm sure most of you are perfectly reasonable and knowledgeable football fans. Don't want the minority to cloud everyone's opinions there. But I've really enjoyed this series. I definitely recommend checking out the Friday episode. Also, you know, other episodes in the series if you've enjoyed this one. I hope they're as informative as I believe they are. I've really enjoyed doing the research and stuff for these. Any comments for me, disagree with any of my judgments here, feel free to post them below. The Cover Zero Facebook page, get to me through Twitter. I'll do my best to respond to everyone that I possibly can. Check out, you know, the Patreon if you so wish. That'd be grand. And, you know, it's been an absolute pleasure. Don't forget, like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. It all helps. Been a pleasure as always. Thanks for your time. Go Bucks.